Hey guys, welcome to Intro to Biomaterials and Drug Delivery. I am Kraken, and this is a course that I've taken on through Biocord, which is the largest biology server on Discord. So welcome. Now, to give you a bit of information about myself without doxing myself, I did my undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering, and while I was at this school, um, I did research in engineering education. So, how to make education in college easier to navigate as an engineer and to just implement more progressive methods to educate future engineers. And then I was in another lab where I was studying apoptosis using resveratrol in glioblastoma multiforme cancer cells. Um, After that, I did a master's of engineering in biomedical engineering. I didn't do any research during that time because I was going into a PhD after this degree. And so I'm currently a PhD student in biomedical engineering, and my current project is using biomimetic and drug-loaded biomaterials to engineer immune cells and influence the local responses and develop translational therapies for inflammatory diseases and regenerative medicine. And this lovely picture of a meow is my cat. This is Kiwi, and she is the love of my life, and she's the unofficial mascot of Biocord, so I thought I would just share a picture of her. So how will this class be delivered? So it will mainly be delivered through a seminar, so a lecture like what I'm doing now. And I will also be uploading primary literature from notable journals on drug delivery and biomaterials, and we will be discussing that in this course. I will also have in-class exercises, so questions for you to think about, as well as design problems that I'm currently working on figuring out how I'm going to implement that in this course. And I am an engineer by training, and so that's all I know. So I will be delivering this course as kind of similar to what you would see in an engineering elective class. So materials, there aren't really a lot of materials that you would need. I will provide everything. The textbook that we will be using is Biomaterials, the Intersection of Biology and Material Science. The authors, Temanoff and Mikos. And Temanoff, I took a class from her as an undergrad, and she's great. Another textbook, hold on, where's my laser pointer? Another textbook we'll be using is Biomaterial Science, an Introduction to Materials in Medicine by Buddy Ratner. He basically wrote the textbook on biomaterials, and I'm not requiring this one, but it is a great resource. It is very, very in-depth, so I don't think it's necessary for an introduction course like this. So we'll mainly be using biomaterials from Temanoff. And then I'll also be pulling primary literature from notable journals like Nature, as well as Journal of Controlled Release, Active Biomaterialia, Biomaterials, and the International Journal of Pharmaceutics, and some stuff from ACS, American Chemical Society. And I'll be providing all of these through PDF if you're on the Biocord Discord server. So you can find those there. So I'll be delivering this course in 3 main modules. The first module is on drug delivery and the fundamentals of pharmacology and pharmacokinetics. So I'll be going through these very broad ideas of how pharmacology works in humans, like how the concept of ligand and receptors, how that's important, how common medicines are delivered and why they're delivered a certain way. And so that has to do with what kind of ligand and receptors are involved in that process, as well as barriers to absorption. So depending on what drug it is, it might not enter the body through oral, but you can administer it a different method. And so that goes into administration methods. The second module is on biomaterials, which is the intersection of biology and medicine. And so we'll talk a bit about material properties as well as common materials and medicine. And then there's a big chunk about the actual interaction between materials and medicine, and we'll talk about host reaction. So what does the host tend to do when there's a foreign material in the body, as well as the very rigorous amount of testing that is required for a biomaterial to reach market. And then degradation of materials is a very important part of biomaterials. Sometimes degradation is desired, and sometimes it isn't. So if you want a hip implant, obviously you don't want that implant to degrade, otherwise you'll be out of a hip joint. Yeah, you'll be out of a hip joint again, which is absolutely useless. But then there are materials that you will want to have degrade, like a extended release pill, for example. You want to degrade slowly so that the payload or the bioactive agent that you're trying to deliver is delivered over a long period of time, as well as applications of biomaterials. I'll also go through that. And then the last section is using biomaterials as a drug delivery system. So there are additional considerations when you combine biomaterials with drug delivery, especially with like regulatory compliance, the FDA waterfall, how to commercialize these products to market. And then their very wide application in many different areas. So I'll touch on immunoengineering, tissue engineering, as well as cancer therapy. So why are we studying biomaterials and drug delivery? The reason is because with both of these areas, if you study them separately, it comes to a point where they cannot progress without, or like their progress in medicine cannot progress fully until you kind of combine them. And the reason is because there are just a lot of complex situations that require complex solutions. For example, if you have a biomaterial and it has degradation properties, it has material properties, and it has biocompatibility properties. But at a certain point, if you want to induce a certain response by the host to this biomaterial, you have to include some sort of pharmacokinetic solution to it, so that maybe you'll tune the immune response to be less inflammatory. Or if you're trying to recruit certain cells, if you're trying to induce regeneration of tissue, that is where drug delivery comes into play when using biomaterials. And then on the drug delivery side, there are a lot of issues like how do you control the dose, and how do you control the dose over a very long amount of time? If you're doing a injection into the vein, that is one very large dose, but it might not be sustained for a very long time. So how do you make sure that the level of drug in the plasma is kind of even? You can solve that with biomaterials. There's also an issue of local versus systemic delivery and drug delivery. So if you only want your drug to be at, say, a particular muscle, if you inject it through the vein, it's going to reach other parts of the body. So you can also keep a drug at a certain place in the body using biomaterials. Bioavailability is also a very huge issue in drug delivery. If many small molecules, many natural compounds, proteins, anything with nucleic acids, they have very, very low bioavailability because they break down in the body very quickly. So say, for example, resveratrol is a very commonly researched compound nowadays. It is found in grapes and is found in wine. It is that kind of magic compound that people were talking about a couple years ago from red wine that said, oh, it has anti-obesity effects, it has anti-diabetes effects, it has anti-cancer effects. But the thing is, if you deliver resveratrol, it doesn't enter the body very very easily, but also once it's in the body, once it's in the bloodstream, its half-life is only 9 minutes. So even if you drink a whole ton of wine, one, you're drunk, but also you're basically out of resveratrol in like 20 minutes. So how do you sustain that? How do you sustain the amount of resveratrol in the system? You can also do that with biomaterials. And the route of delivery is also another issue where, depending on how you put it into the body, it can change bioavailability, how it's whether it's local or systemic, or even the dose. So a very prominent example is insulin. Now with insulin is a protein that's used in diabetes for type 1 and type 2 because they're either not producing any insulin or not producing enough insulin to control that blood glucose level and have glucose entering into tissue. So people with diabetes sometimes have to take recombinant insulin. Now, if you ingest a protein like insulin, it just gets degraded in the stomach, and so you can't even absorb it and use it if you take it orally, and that's why you have to inject it. So route of delivery is also a very big issue in drug delivery, and there are ways to get around it with biomaterials. So kind of in overarching view, the reason why we study biomaterials and drug delivery and why it's a great concept to study together is because a lot of these problems that you see in both biomaterials and drug delivery can be combined, and you can kind of get around them with each other. And today's problems in medicine, in biomaterials, and drug delivery require these complex interactions and meshing of solutions to achieve an effective delivery and treatment therapy. So this is the end of my introduction, and I hope that you'll watch the first lecture on YouTube. Yeah, thank you.